I'm excited for people to listen today to two of the founders of Aquafit, which is really, it's focused on being a flexible, useful vaginal dilator. But what's so interesting and common about so many of the people in this space is just the overwhelming enthusiasm and passion to really make things better. You know, obviously in certain cases, it's based on personal experience, but just the energy and the drive and the focus, even when it's hard pushing this boulder uphill, I think is really exciting.
And I want to really comment on two things that I'm just seeing really emerge in the space of women's health or of health and well-being in general. Number one is this magical ingredient, hyaluronic acid. It just seems to be showing up everywhere. And I think in the gynecology world, we've really taken a lesson from those in dermatology in the use of this ingredient for health and wellness. Number two is the discussion about hydrogels, which are near and dear to my heart for various reasons, which we can speak about at another time. But the hydrogel phenomenon is huge. And these women have really combined these two incredible ingredients to create a wonderful lineup of products. So let's listen. Welcome to the Business of the V. Hello, friends and colleagues. I'm Dr. Alyssa Dweck.
And I'm Rachel Braun-Sherrill. Each week, we bring you the most fascinating investors, inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and healthcare practitioners who are making things happen in women's sexual and reproductive health.
If you are a woman, know a woman, have a business, or care about your V health and wellness, fasten your seatbelts and listen in to another informative and inspiring episode.
We are so excited today to have our guests, Rebecca Sternberg and Varda Messer, who are among the co-founders of Aquafit. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us as well.
So start the story. Tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and how you came to be the co-founders of Aquafit. And first off, what it is and what it does, because I think that will really grab people's attention.
Okay, so Aquafit Intimate is we address sexual wellness and intimate health, and it really started from a personal story, as most good innovations do. I, in my background, am a strategic designer, and nobody knows what that is, and neither do I sometimes. But it basically uses design to solve problems, and it can be problems in digital or physical, and it takes the whole gamut of design thinking and usability. And 10 years ago exactly, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and I initially was extremely healthy. I was terribly shocked, how undergoing this, and I had amazing medical care, and I got a lot of pelvic radiation. And with my release, I was told that I have to use a dilator. I unfortunately didn't bring it with me. It's a piece of plastic. It's rigid. You have to put lubricant on it. And key is that it's actually painful to use. And I looked at my doctor and I said to him, Savi, this can't be the interface for the vagina. It makes no sense. And
so stop there for a second and just explain to people who don't know what a dilator actually does. And I'm also curious where you were in your own fertility journey when you were diagnosed with cervical cancer.
So this is also point-on questions. I sued, in the end, I sued both the hospital that was doing fertility treatments for me and the local HMO, because in fact, as part of my fertility treatments, I had Pap tests and I had a false negative. And so upon making it to my HMO, because the way healthcare is organized in Israel is that you're diagnosed at the HMO, but then you move over to the hospital system, I had, the doctor said to me, well, why didn't you come back in 2009 And I said, well, why should I have come back in 2009? And he turned the screen to me and he showed me that I had a positive pap smear, but that the doctor had not pressed enter. So I immediately took out my phone. I photographed that. And then he immediately switched it back, realizing that maybe he shouldn't have showed that to me. And as I was going through the radiation therapy, I was suing, and that's our startup money, by the way. We got further money, but we took that money and immediately put it into Aquafit Intimate. Wow. But getting back to what is dilation therapy, at first we thought that we were a long tail. Dilation therapy is a plastic. It sort of looks like a dildo typically. It could be a little bit soft or a little bit hard. And it's used for women who've gone through radiation to prevent adhesions post-radiation. So if you have vaginal adhesions, you can't get cervical exams, but you also can't have sex. So my sex life was dependent on this piece of plastic that really was uncomfortable for my use. And I was in a tiff. Well, what am I going to do? Like, I can't move from the small medium to the medium large. And what is this? I was 48 at the time. I was like, my sex life is over. This cannot be. So immediately at that point, my entrepreneur gene came into play. And I said, it really cannot be that there can't be a better usability interface for the vagina. And moments before we show the product and we talk about it, and then as part of my reboot, I was doing triathlons and I needed a third partner for the triathlon. I do the running. A friend of mine, my brother's daughter, I persuaded her to do the swim, and I needed a biker. And that's how I met Varda. Varda was like, oh, I'll bike. Okay, we didn't know.
I didn't know you could do it that way. I would be happy to do a third. I just didn't think I could ever do all three pieces.
It's sometimes divided into three.
Yeah, you can.
And immediately upon the first connection with Varda, we were like, no nonsense. She was like, do you want to meet before we do it? And I'm like, no, just pick me up at 5 and we'll do it. We didn't
speak. 5:30 in the morning, just across from municipality. I picked her up. This woman entered the car full of vibrations. Doesn't stop speaking. I said, Rebecca, 1 minute. Let me wake up. Let's do the competition.
I'm with you. I don't want any vibrations at 5:30 in the morning. I don't care what I'm doing.
And then Varda asked me, what I'm doing. And I said, I'm thinking about a sexual wellness startup. And she was all in from the beginning and has been the biggest emotional asset to Aquafit Intimate ever since. And part of the reason is that all of us Varda is now 60, but at the time was 55. So she was menopausal and she has a healthy sex life, but
married 35 years, 3 kids, the whole Monty, the full Monty.
But actually sex is like having sandpaper in your vagina. So immediately she got it. And the first thing we did is that we partnered with Verid, our third partner, and she is an advanced chemist. She's one of the leading applied chemists in Israel. And I had met her. She was a client of mine for 3D printing. And the first thing we did is we moved from plastic to what we call a gel stick, which is really a gel in a stick. So moving from something that's inert to something that suddenly is very similar to vaginal tissue, opened up a whole world of intimate wellness for us. We didn't intend to enter that space. We really wanted to make a better dilator. But what we ended up figuring out is that as soon as you move to something that can combine 3 things in one, which most women don't talk about their vaginas in this way. One is that the vagina is a muscle. So you have to work it. It's got a mechanical aspect. The second side of it is that it needs lubrication. We know this. Like in the past 10 years, there have been amazing natural lubricants in the market and it really improved women's lives. And the third thing is vaginal pH, which is the vaginal acidity. And that's what we put together in one very simple hydrogel. And the other thing that was super important to us is that it not be painful. So we basically, you take the hydrogel, you dip it in water, it activates natural lubrication. So you can already see it's very, very soft. It has tensile strength and also mechanical strength. And we developed this notion of an intimate gel stick and intimate training. So while working with the vagina, we're doing three things at once. First thing is we're working the muscle. Second thing is that we're massaging any plant-based ingredient into the vaginal wall. And the third is we're managing the pH. And
can I ask one thing, because I'm not sure that everyone in the audience knows what a hydrogel is. Can you start with that and also review the ingredients that provide these three indications to be addressed?
Yeah, so a hydrogel, it's very interesting. We know about gels, right? They're in liquid state. And if you think about a hydrogel, it's sort of like a jello. It's a gel in a solid state. And what's interesting about a gel in a solid state is that you can think of it, if you were to imagine, as almost a 3D structure or a 3D web that captures water and can also in the different in the mesh conceptually, it's a chemical mesh. It can also capture other active agents, and we'll talk about them in a second. But really, also, people are very familiar with contact lenses. Contact lens is hydrogel. It's a hydrogel uniquely designed for the eye. So what it's doing is that it's allowing air, oxygen, water management, and light rays to the eye. And what we've done is we've developed a hydrogel that is almost like penis made out of gelatin. Okay, if you think about it,
it's better than the real thing,
and it feels better than the real thing because it doesn't deliver diseases. The reverse. And what it's doing is that it's which I think would be a fun session. What it's doing is that it's using. If we go back to the contact lens analogy, it's using vaginal triggers. That is, our vagina and we didn't know any of this when we started, right? So this is as we're going, we're learning. The vagina has a unique pH. So most women, a healthy vagina is a little bit acidic. It's somewhere in between 3.8 and 4.8 or 5. So the way we release active agents into the vagina is, I hate using the term, a smart hydrogel, but it is a responsive hydrogel in the sense that because we're the first to put something like a human tissue into the vagina, it can, by osmosis, sense what the situation is in the vagina. And I want to pontificate this a little bit more. What can we do for our vaginas? We can squirt a vaginal gel. It's typically called an applicator. And that's almost as primitive as telling you that your oral health is just squirt some toothpaste into your mouth. Okay. So one option is squirting something. The other option is having, with an applicator, the other option is to have a suppository in which you can't have sexual activity with the suppository. And its experience is a little bit of leakage as well. Or you can have a tablet, a low-release tablet like hormones, or that's basically the three mechanisms that we have, or a ring. And what we're doing is we're saying, if we could come back to a 3D object that is working your muscles like a penis, okay, but is sensitive to the tissue and can release water and also any other active agent, we have a new interface for the vagina. And now let's go back to the active agents. Our first product was Aquafit Spray, and it has uric acid as its main active agent and vitamin B3. And this is also super interesting because uric acid is coming out to be, a huge hit in the cosmetic industry. But what it's really doing in the vaginal space is that a vagina that's dry has cracks. And if you massage the cracks with uric acid, you're really smoothing out the surface and you're making the surface more comfortable, right? For penetration or also for anything else. So the mechanism of massaging the uric acid into the vaginal wall is also something that only we can do because this is the nature of how we're doing it.
I was going to say, for listeners who can't see this incredibly cool looking device, it almost looks like a little teeny 3D pyramid or cone. So, and it narrows at the top, which of course would make insertion easier and more comfortable than a static dilator. It's also a little bit pliable, so it doesn't feel or look as firm as the plastic dilator that seems so barbaric that you were given at the beginning of your treatment. The other thing is that, just to edify the audience, the dilators typically come in multiple sizes, so that you start with one that's super narrow and then you slowly progress up in circumference. But in this particular case, it looks like it's more of a one size fits all, or maybe a two sizes fits all, based on your product or selection.
You had mentioned that it was, the original intent was for lesions, but we've had other conversations, and I want to ask Alyssa, in terms of people that she sees in her office, there are other reasons that people would have painful penetration.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious if you could share what some of those are and how a dilator might help in those circumstances as well.
Yeah. So, I see that your product seems to really cover multiple indications, which is really something to discuss. Number one would be what you're calling sandpaper sex, or the dryness that occurs as a result of diminished estrogen, usually due to hormone changes, which could be due to menopause, could be occurring during perimenopause, the years leading up to menopause, also could be caused by medication that might cause dryness, or with lactation, because during lactation, your estrogen levels are pretty low and vaginal dryness can occur. So there are multiple reasons for dryness. So using a moisturizer of sorts, whether it's in the form of hyaluronic acid, which is a super popular ingredient, or in the form of estrogen replacement, which some people will use as a minimally absorbed form of estrogen in the vagina, or just using another over-the-counter moisturizer, made with other ingredients, are often turned towards. The other issue that you mention is pelvic floor dysfunction. So what can happen are multiple things. You can get the narrowing of the vagina due to various issues in your particular case, and I'm so glad you seem to be feeling and doing much better after that terrible and difficult journey. But what happens really is that in accommodation to the anticipation of pain with anything being thought of going into the vagina, the muscles of the pelvic floor tighten and they become what we call hypertonic. They absolutely tighten and almost even can spasm as a result of the thought of anything even penetrating the vagina. And this can cause pain. So using a dilator, or in this particular case, the AquaFit device, helps the mind to tell the vagina, do not tighten up. This is not going to be painful. And it sort of trains the vagina in that way so the muscles don't tighten. Third, we're speaking about vaginal pH, which is, the natural acidic pH that occurs in the vagina as a result of the balance of the microbiome. There are many organisms in the vagina that help to maintain an acidic environment, which is the healthy environment to prevent infection and discharge and odor and itching, et cetera. And so using a product that helps to facilitate a good acidic pH is helpful. Your device seems to address any or all of these issues of concern.
And I also, first of all, I couldn't have said this better. So absolutely, you hit all the cylinders. And now I want to talk to the women themselves. So in fact, our users are exactly manifesting these three different groups. Our young women, we're finding Israel is a very peculiar, we started our pilot sales in Israel, and Israel is a little bit peculiar because we have a large community of Orthodox youngsters, and they're not consummating their marriages. So we're getting calls from the husbands who are like, well, we can't consummate our marriage. But we're also seeing vaginismus, endometriosis, and also I would call a subcategory of vaginismus because a lot of young men are being educated on porn. And so if a young woman has a bad experience and the first time she experiences penetration, she's highly likely to develop some form of vaginismus, maybe not full blown. And we're seeing a lot of women from those categories. And the interesting thing is that this mind vagina connection that you mentioned it's very interesting, because most of the young women are reporting, wow, I'm in control. And this only just inserting the tip and beginning to work with yourself really makes a dramatic change. We've had about 98% success rate in this age group with intimate training for 6 to 9 weeks. And this is amazing, because this young group of women, their sex life is ahead of them. They can be educated about their vaginas. I'm not saying that menopausal women can't be, but we're also seeing, we'll get to the menopausal women in a second, we're unfortunately seeing women stopping to have sex in their 50s and 60s, and then interestingly boosting back to it in their late 60s and 70s with a new partner. So this is kind of interesting. So for the young women, it's definitely vaginismus, and it's been very, very successful with them.
I just want to mention vaginismus again, a complicated term just to essentially mean the tightening of the vaginal muscles, whether it's due to, emotional input or because something is being trialed to be inserted and it might be painful. So here's today's hot flash. We have discussed vaginismus on Business of the V before, and the definition is tightening of the vaginal muscles involuntarily, causing pain. But did you know that 53% of complainers of vaginismus are actually between the ages of 26 and 35 years old? I want to definitely understand more about the study you've done. Is this a experience trial or a study of another nature? Can you talk about that a little?
Sure. So it's both, in a sense that during COVID, like the rest of the world, we were looking at an Israeli company that had developed a conversational bot to report COVID, and they did it in 3 weeks. And I looked at them and I said, wow, if they can put this up in 3 weeks, can't we do a self-reporting conversational interface to educate women? They're at home, they're not making it to the gynecologists, and can we start developing that? And we did. At the time, we were covered by a grant from the Israeli government, and we put out a digital interface that allows a woman in 3 minutes or less to self-assess herself and then get help. And I say this in 3 minutes or less because, unfortunately, we're also hearing that women typically experience 15 doctors before their vaginal issue is fully diagnosed. And some of this has to do with the different age groups and the different indications. And also, I think, unfortunately, unlike you, Alyssa, a lot of doctors are uncomfortable having conversations about sexual wellness with women. And menopause as well, there's a lot of limited knowledge about what the options are for women being. So at every interaction, we love doctors, but at every interaction, there was a missed opportunity to explain. So we use a conversational bot to let a woman, first of all, understand herself. It's completely free. And then and we also work with Dr. Amy Kesselman, she has a clinic much like yours that is a sexual wellness clinic. And what we're doing is we're monitoring the number of uses, the responses, and under the medical side, the length of time from start to finish among young women, because of course, menopausal women, this is a change of routine for the rest of our lives. But for the young group of women, this is the prime category of women that she works with in her clinic. So it's not a clinical trial, it's a marketing trial. But sitting next to me right here, Varda is, because we started out in a Hebrew-speaking country, and our bot is English. Varda operates
the Hebrew bot.
She operates as the Hebrew conversational bot. And I say this with a huge smile because we also learned the behavioral changes that a woman needs to actually buy this. And this is something so interesting. First of all, our landing pages have 2 buttons on them: speak with a doctor for free or speak with us. And we were astounded to find out that most women, we're talking about 90%, prefer to speak to us and rather than speak with a doctor. And part of the reason is that they don't often know what to ask, and they don't want to sound ignorant or stupid. And we're getting so many questions about, wow, my sex life has been fine since I was 50. The estrogen story, this is our collective mission, is to educate women on the estrogen story. And what estrogen...
Not only about the estrogen, I'm going back to the young women, which has all life of sexuality ahead of them. They really don't know how to really approach the thing that they are afraid. The fear is actually leading them, okay? Because once they have a sex which hurt them, and they cannot, it's like a downhill. It's a downhill, and they're afraid to do sex again. So what they want is to release this fear. Once they train by themselves with a device that doesn't hurt, and they can do it by themselves, they release the fear. It's actually in all the conversations, it comes up. It's the fear that controls you. If they are not afraid, they will be open, okay? And who knows better than you? When you are open and you're not afraid, then everything works. They have to release this fear, and until they actually by themselves do the de-elation therapy with a device that doesn't hurt, feels very smooth, then they get over it. Then they release the fear. It comes in all the conversations.
But also the conversations among menopausal women. And I want to speak about these conversations because I think that that's really another asset. We don't sell a product that is on the shelf. You go to CVS and you buy it, because really every woman has a conversation with us either through our digital interface or with us in person. And these conversations are so essential because they're educating us about what women need to hear from us and what they need to hear from themselves. And this is an asset on its own, which I'm not as emotionally developed as Varda, and yet this has been the most interesting thing throughout our journey with Aquafit. So for instance, we had a super user. A woman had bought 6 units. So obviously she was working with us, for a long time. And I wrote her an email and I said, hi, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your feedback. And by the way, we just released a new Aquafit bio for pH balance and a digital interface. So she wrote me back, I don't really need a digital interface, but I have a few questions. And then I thought to myself, doesn't need a digital interface. This must be an older woman. And then I returned and responded, well, can you tell me a little bit about your scenario? This is a 73-year-old woman who reported directly, openly, that her husband has erectile dysfunction and that she worked with Aquafit and him to time their sex life. And I had literally goosebumps over this, right? She says, nobody in the medical field thinks I'm sexually active. They don't really, I don't exist for them. And here she is finding someone to tell her, to listen to her and also help her with a product. The second group of women, which we also didn't fully have in our radar, are breast cancer recovery women. Yeah. You were mentioning before the relationship between hormones and sandpaper vagina, if we can call it that. Women who are so thankful for getting hormonal therapy that is changing their lives and saving them are also blocking estrogen. And these women are experiencing menopausal symptoms in a radical way.
Yes, and they have it very suddenly. So, I just want to jump in here because we've identified the young woman who is having difficulty consummating her marriage. We're having the breast cancer survivors. We're having the menopausal population. How are you marketing your device and also the informational piece of your website. How are you doing that?
And how are you doing that on a shoestring budget? That's the missing, that's the missing component.
That was question 3.
So first of all, again, spot on. A young woman really doesn't want to hear the problems of a postnatal woman, and a postnatal woman doesn't want to hear about menopause, and a breast cancer recovery woman doesn't want to hear about any of these.
Yeah.
So what we've done is that we actually do different marketing pieces and educational pieces for each of these different audiences. And the same thing, the conversational bot is also really very helpful in this, because when you enter, I'm 34, you're going to get different questions than if you were to enter 45 or 55. Right. And similarly, also in the feedback cycle, that is, a woman who's 24 thinks that things should happen in 2 days. So if she reports to you back, listen, I don't want to do this, it's not helping me, we can send her a message that's related to her age and say, look, we're really sorry to hear that you're having a hard time, but 6 to 9 weeks and you're out of this. Whereas a menopausal woman needs to be educated differently. This is, don't have estrogen. This is a new daily routine. So what we do is we target and this is also part of our learning curve. At the beginning, we started selling via Google using AdWords. We have a list of queries that we keep for each different age group. We also tightly monitor what women are looking for, which is the positive side of Google. You can look in every geography and see per geography how many women a week are looking for vaginal infections or dryness, et cetera. So we work very, very tightly with demand and keywords that are targeted for the different groups. At the beginning, Google blocked us.
That was something I was going to ask about, because that seems to be a limitation for any product having to do with the vagina.
I have to say that we were able to find small loopholes or cracks in the system. We, for 8 weeks, were rebutting. Google would flag us as pornography. If a woman types in painful sex, it's pornography, 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 pornography. In the 8th week, we made it to a human being. And we showed the Google representative 2 different tables. One is how many women are looking for the medical terms, just as you said so brilliantly before. Who knows what vaginismus is, but who knows that vaginal dryness is called atrophic vaginitis. And then we showed them the numbers of women who were looking for common English words: painful sex, vaginal dryness, vaginal itching, vaginal burning. And basically, we reneged the blocking. So there were certain keywords that they let go and allowed us through. And that's how we discovered, by the way, the breast cancer recovery. They were our first buying customer. But also on images, it's very, very peculiar. We went out for a photo shoot, and the algorithm, even though this looks highly phallic, right? The algorithm has no problem with this because it doesn't know what it is. So it doesn't block images of the gel stick. But if you show a woman anywhere in between, if you show skin anywhere in between the top of the breast with a bra on and the underwear line and the panty line, that's immediately like blocked.
Wow.
So
we've spent a lot of, we're steeped in this concept of how difficult, you come up with a great idea, you might even get it funded, and then you still have these barriers. I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about where you are as a business. Where are you available for sale? What are some of your plans? You had talked about a new product, but, for the people who are listening to this and are interested from an investing standpoint, from a personal use standpoint, physicians who are a lot of our listeners who are looking for new ideas, where are you right now? Where can someone buy Aquafit? Through what channels and what countries?
Absolutely. So first of all, we have 3 products out to market. All of them have been regulated by European CP&P, so they're cosmetic regulation. This was also a knowledgeable tactic. And we're available globally. We started in Israel in the past year and a half just to learn how to market. And we opened globally. We've been open globally for a year, for 6 months, half a year
in Israel, and half a year.
And we first of all, every woman who has a problem should reach out and try to do self-care, not instead of a doctor, but a lot of the self-care will bring us really, really far. So unless it's something very, very chronic, or that we're seeing that women can solve their problem on their own before reaching out to a gynecologist, or we're seeing pelvic care therapists who are asking the women to come to the clinic with an AquaFit first. So our position is we would love every woman who has an issue to try us, right? It's the first thing. But
First, go to the digital.
It's
free.
The conversational assessment, but also go to our website. There's a lot of explanatory information there on aquafitintimate.com. But also we work closely with gynecologists and pelvic care therapists who are actually the most proactive on all of these things. At least in Israel, we found in the UK, it's typically primary care gynecologists. Women, we're selling to New York City, Chicago, California. Women who find us. We've also, this is Varda's genius in the COVID era. She found a loophole in the global shipping. We make it anywhere worldwide in 3 to 5 business days. So that part is also covered. Investment-wise, we're really on a shoestring. We received
2 grants.
2 grants, one from the Israel Innovation Authority that brought us to about $450K, which we did everything that we have on that, plus another 150 from the Case for Her, which are phenomenal investors in women's health.
Sweden.
So from Sweden, incredibly supportive and very proactive. But in order to expand globally, we definitely need investment, but we would really prefer that women just buy or doctors refer. That is, we really have products out to market. We are surprised that we're breaking even, right? So it's actually a good business. Like, you're in the business of the V, and we really believe it's a good business. But in order to make money, you have to just invest more money in the Goliath, which is Google, right? So and I want to say this for all of the young entrepreneurs trying to enter this space, it's a difficult space, but it is a viable space. For every dollar that we put into Google, we take back about $2 to $3. And this is an amazing number. And we also have 44% return rate. That's incredible. That means more than my buying the shampoo or checking out a shampoo and always changing month by month. We've made it in a year and a half to 44% return rate, which is amazing. So investment-wise, we are looking for seed investment of 1.25 million. And without investment, we're looking for women to take care of themselves and
to learn.
You had talked about repurchase rate, return rate. How long does a device last?
Very good. So AquaFit is a consumable. It lasts, we typically, it's 14 days from opening and it has to be refrigerated as well. If you think about this, coming back to the initial part of the conversation, it's a hydrogel. So it's material strength. You use it, and we really think we're a behavioral change company. I use it in the shower. Varda uses it after the shower for 3 minutes. You wash it afterwards in water. Put it back in its case and put it in the fridge. But it is for 2 weeks, just like if you think about a cucumber. And when your cucumber is fresh, it's nice and tight. And after 2 weeks, it starts to wilt. We also, part of this is also obviously a marketing decision, but women like to feel progress and they don't like the problem in their face. It's very interesting. So we are saying 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, and each woman gets a different plan. And this is also super interesting.
So you can customize your own refill rate, if you will, or repurchase rate.
And in saying that, that's also so interesting because as a behavioral company, you'll see different behaviors among different women. And it's very much like Pilates or going to sports. Okay. I know sometimes you're like, okay, I this year purchased exactly a year ago for a seaside pool, and I lost money on this membership because I never went. Okay, so with Aquafit, we're seeing with the young women, obviously they complete,
They complete 1 to 3 months.
1 to 3 months.
Mhm.
But first, I want to come back to the menopausal women or the estrogen depleted women of the different groups. And I think that this is so interesting because we spoke with the leading HRT company in Israel. I don't want to mention names because we made a mistake and our SEO person put them up front in their product name and it was trademarked and they called us up and they told us take that off. So we took it off and there, if you are taking hormones, which are many of our users are also taking hormones, right? It's but it takes about 8 weeks to kick in. And so she was reporting that not only do women not know the role of estrogen in sexual wellness and also in contraception, but that a lot of women in week number 5 give up. They have a lot of customer loss in week 5. What happens with Aquafit is that you can use it a week in a month, 2 weeks in a month, every other day for a quarter. And because it's a muscle and it's improving you and you don't lose it immediately. It's sort of, you don't have to do it every day. I personally use Aquafit Bio every other day because I'm addicted to the feeling, right? I feel like my vagina is literally happy. I'm addicted to the biome balance. But we'll see some women using it every quarter for a month and a quarter. We'll see women using it systematically. We'll see women using it, half a year, coming back another half a year. It's very interesting.
No, it's less. The distance is less. I think the most distance that I saw is 2 months in menopausal. But the nice thing about it is that it's a muscle. So it's the same like your Pilates
muscle memory, right?
Yeah, it's a muscle.
And you bring up a good point because, of course, the dryness during menopause is more of a chronic and progressive issue if it's not addressed. So, we're running close on time. I'd like to ask what is coming down the pipeline, if you're free to share, because that your passion is contagious and infectious, and it's unbelievable. So I'm guessing the wheels are turning with future thoughts.
So obviously it's all investment dependent, but really the group that we discovered through Aquafit Bio, which is mainly lactic acid and approaches the vagina by not putting in antibiotics, but by systematically balancing your pH for 10 days, and then the body re-triggers in. We suddenly started looking at the number of women who are looking for vaginal infections and STDs. And our next product is probably going to be on the STD range, not antibiotics, but really how to naturally make sure that your vagina is on the good side of not getting infected by an STD. A lot of that has to do with pH, obviously. But it also, we found plant-based seaweeds that also are anti-HPV and anti-BV. And so we're looking into that space in the R&D. And on the digital side, we really want to be a resource for anybody having anything to do with sexual health and behavior. It's an open resource. We're finding some women are actually using us to have a discussion with their doctors, because after they get, they download the concerns, and then they can come to the doctor and say, well, I've just monitored myself for 3 weeks, and this is the frequency, and this is what I'm experiencing, and start the conversation. We want women to start the conversation, not be passive about this. And we're also surprised at how hard it is to get a woman to do something for herself. And this is really our biggest challenge. It's really just 3 minutes. It's last in your care, right? You do your hair and you do your nails and you make sure that you have this and that. And your intimate wellness is such a key part of really feeling amazing, whether you're having sexual relations or not. They're disconnected. It's overly tabooed for no reason. So we're we're optimistic and energetic about what we're doing. But had you asked us 4 years ago if we would have known how hard it is, we couldn't have imagined. I'm a totally privileged individual, and I've never seen so many barriers from investors, doctors.
We never felt there is a bias.
Right.
Never. Not me. I've been in business all my life. I never thought people are discriminating me for being a woman.
Right.
And all of a sudden, when I'm 60, I feel there's a bias, and I don't understand where it comes from.
And also the women themselves, right?
Well, I think that could be an entire podcast on its own. We want to thank you so much for sharing your journey. It's incredible to hear. Your passion, like I said, is infectious and contagious. So we really look forward to sharing the episode. And thank you for joining us.
And thank you as well. We know we've been at this a long time from our respective points of view, and it is hard work, and it's not for the faint of heart. So thrilled to have people like you so focused on making things better.
And also, really, the two of you are just doing, it's so important, the educational side and the conversational side. And we really can't be more thankful for this opportunity. And
it's our pleasure.
Have a wonderful, wonderful 2023.
Yeah,
you too. Be well.
Bye. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast at businessofthev.com for the latest trends and trendsetters in women's health and business.